Hello and welcome to the BlockParty indicator tutorial. In this video, we are going to cover where and how to get hold of this indicator, a quick start for those who just want to dive straight in and get on with the signals and start trading, the full content guide along with the backtesting details, and then finally how to automate the strategy and execute these trades quickly. So first of all, let's find out where to get hold of this indicator. Head on over to the BlockPartyTrading.com website, and there you can come straight onto the home screen, and there are multiple ways where you can access it. You can go on the home screen and scroll right on down until you get to the membership packages, and there are two ways that you can access it via the membership packages, and that's either via the BlockParty indicator package, which includes the indicator, access to all of the backtesting, and also all access to the signals package, or you can get the full works and get the BlockParty automation package. This gives you access to not only the signals package, the full indicator package, but access to all of the BlockParty trading bots on any.trade platform completely for free. So that's right, you only pay one price, and that includes all of the profit shares and volume fees as well. If you would like to find out a little bit more about the indicator, then head on over to the indicators page. On the indicators page, it just gives you a bit of an overview of, well, the BlockParty indicator. I do want to stress that you can have a 7-day free trial with any and all of our products, including this indicator. So, of course, you can watch this video and be sold on it, but you can also try it for yourself, just to see how effective this indicator is. And of course, you can find the guide just here as well. You really can get started with this indicator pretty much straight off the bat. If it's just signals and trade entries and targets and stop losses that you want, then this will accommodate that. But this indicator has so much more, which we will cover in this video. As promised though, we will show you a very quick start on how to get rolling with this indicator. This indicator is 100% exclusive to TradingView, so therefore, no TradingView, no indicator. Once you have signed up and you're on your trial, or you've signed up to the full package for the indicator or automation, then you will be granted access with your TradingView username. In order to add the indicator, head on up to indicators, head on down to invite only scripts, trading, and then you will find your indicator just here. Once you have the indicator added, it is defaulted to very effective settings and the same settings that we as traders personally use. So as you can see on the chart, the indicator has been added. We will cover what all of these lines and boxes and squiggles mean, but for those of you who want to dive straight in, we'll just take a look straight at the signals. As you can see, these little bears and these little bulls, or cows as we're limited by the emojis, signify these are both long signals and also short signals. So let's look at entering a trade. First of all, if you want to visualize your take profits and stop losses, then head on into settings and scroll on down to where it says show signals positions. If you turn this on, then it will automatically populate all of your signal positions, as you can see here. So let's take a look at an example trade. For the purpose of this video, we're using the replay function on TradingView, which allows us to go back and pretty much simulate some old trading, if you will. But it's great for tutorials such as this, for instance. Now, as we can see here, we don't have a signal. As we move along, we can see that a short signal has populated just here, indicating that we need to go short. The stop loss and the take profit zone has automatically printed on. The stop loss is defined by the most recent swing high, as it's a short, and if it was a long, it'd be the most recent swing low. So we would be taking a trade right here on the candle close of the signal candle. So just here is where our entry would be. And then simply, let's move along and see where this takes us. And just there we see that we have taken profit right at this zone. We've been using the BlockParty take profit targets. And it is that simple to set up a short. Now let's take a quick look at a long. And here we are getting ready to take a long. As we move forward, we get signified of a long signal just here, along with the stop loss zone and also the take profit zone up there. Let's move this chart down a little bit so we can see where the TP is. So we can simply set our take profit up here and our stop loss down here. Again, the stop loss is signified by the most recent swing low as it's a long, which is just here. and this is all calculated for you. The take profit is actually calculated with a risk reward of 1-to-1, and the 1-to-1 is based on a whole heap of backtesting and live testing with our trading team, and it's what we use as traders ourselves. This generally comes out to around about a 60 to 70% win rate, so let's see how this long trade works out. And just there we hit take profit. And as you can see from this very short clip that, a lot of these trades do end up taking profit. And again, I need to stress, it really is as simple as that. There is a whole heap of logic that has gone into producing these very simple signals that are signified by a bull and a bear that takes into consideration a whole heap of trading confluences for you. Although one thing that is very important is abiding by a strategy, because entry is only one part of being a successful trader. Having a great indicator certainly helps. However, you need to make sure that you are abiding by a certain strategy. And we have shared our exact strategy that we use with this indicator, which can all be located on the guide on the website. However, since this is a quick guide or a quick startup at the start of this video, we will just run through it quickly. You will need some required tools, which is simply TradingView, the BlockParty indicator, and obviously a trading terminal, whether it is on an exchange, a smart trade platform, or you can even trade on TradingView itself. We have two styles of trading that we advise for this indicator, which is both scalping and also swing trades. For scalping, we suggest to do it on the 3-minute time frame. Any lower, then lag starts to become a bit of an issue with TradingView. And you can absolutely go higher, but we have found with backtesting and live testing, 3-minute to be the strongest time frame. And for our swing trades, we generally look at the 6-hour time frame. This again has proven to be one of the strongest time frames pretty much across all assets. As for assets, we generally recommend, if you're trading scalping style, then to operate within the top 10 market cap for crypto. Gold is great, and for the Forex majors. As soon as you start to look at some of the lower caps, and it can really affect such small targets. But when you are trading with swing trades, then pretty much anything is game, from all crypto, from high, mid, and low caps, as well as all Forex stocks and metals. Exchanges, it is really down to your preference. Use what you trust, use what you like, and use what you know. We don't have any advice there whatsoever. Where we do generally advise you though is the risk per trade. So risk per trade is very different from an investment. A lot of traders will use a fixed investment per trade, whether it's $100 or $1,000, it doesn't really matter. However, this can massively impact the consistency of your strategy. For example, if you have a trade that is operating with a 5% stop loss with $1,000 and another trade that is operating with a 20% stop loss and $1,000, those potential outcomes are going to be very, very different. We always advise using a risk per trade approach. And this basically means that whatever your loss may be, whether it's 5% or 20%, the loss will always be the same. That does require a little bit of calculation on how much your investment into that trade is going to be, because they will vary based on your stop loss. But when you are operating to a risk-reward basis for trading, this is almost mandatory to attain a consistent strategy. So we would say this is one of the most important things to follow when trading. As we established earlier on, the entry protocol is simply at the signal candle close. The stop loss is signified by the indicator itself, but if you want to do it manually, then for shorts we operate to the nearest or most prominent swing high, as this would be for this trade here, and for long it would be the most recent swing low or most prominent, which for this trade right here would be just here. Now this can be a little bit subjective depending on your trading style, and what you deem as a swing low or a pivot may be different to another person. So we have just used what we have deemed as the best and something that we consistently register as a swing low and a swing high. This can all be customized in the settings, so you can adjust them as to your preference, which is not so important when manually trading. However, it does become very important when you're automating it. As we touched on earlier on, the whole basis of how this is traded is using a risk reward. So for example, our stop loss is 5%, and our take profit would be 5% because we operate with a 1-to-1 risk reward. But it is important to note that as your risk reward generally increases, then your win rate generally decreases. So it is often what's more important to you. Do you like to have lots of consistent winners with a relatively conservative profit, Or do you like to have the occasional big winner that kind of tips the balance every time you win? However, it is important to note that due to our backtesting and live testing, we have dramatically found that a one-to-one risk reward with this indicator and this strategy works tremendously well across the 3-minute and also 6-hour time frame. That's not to say that there aren't better risk rewards out there, it's just a case of finding them. So that pretty much covers a quick start to using the BlockParty indicator. For those of you who want to learn more, then watch on. So let's dive into the depths of the BlockParty indicator. As a quick reminder, all of this information that I'm going to go over can be found in the wiki on the BlockParty website. Just head on over to BlockParty Indicator, the indicator guide, and you can find out how to use it, the strategy guide that we just covered, all the backtesting and assets, as well as a bunch more information, such as full in-depth risk management, pro trader advice and tools, how to automate the actual trades themselves, including how to place a trade as fast as possible across various different smart trade platforms such as Annie, TradingView, exchanges, even MT5, and then lastly some information on funded accounts. Because this is available to use on MT5, then it opens the doors to using funded accounts and prop firms and everything like that. How to dramatically increase your trading account. And of course, some more introductory stuff as well, like how to set an alert on the indicator, how to add the indicator, and some more frequently asked questions around the indicator. So let's dive in. In order to open up your settings to the indicator, head up, highlight the indicator just here, and go to the cog. This will bring up all of the customizable settings that are available to use with the BlockParty indicator. We have been conscious to make sure that we have not made this too complicated or too confusing. The first thing that we will cover on this indicator is the trend lines. Trend lines are very significant within trading and very prominent. In fact, it'll probably be up there with the first 1, 2, 3 things that you'll ever learn with trading. Why? Well, because they work, and it's also because lots of other traders abide by these as well. However, trend lines can be quite subjective. What do you deem as a pivot point, and also how can you confirm a breakout? Well, we have done our best to try and automate these for you. The trend lines here are signified by these white descending lines and white ascending lines as well. So you can see as they pop, as the chart zigzags and waves around, they will draw on here automatically, and as you can see, they result in some great breakouts, such as this that breaks up and this that breaks down. We can also see there's a few duds as well, like this one just here. So whilst trend lines are brilliant, and they truly are, I would not rest my entire trading strategy on just simply one trend line. It is always worthwhile using various different confluences, whether it's divergences, support and resistances to help confirm these. However, you don't need that because you've already got these amazing signals. That being said, we have very kindly added in alerts along with these trend lines, which we'll touch on later when we cover all of the alerts and signals. If you do want to adjust these trend lines and sensitivity a little bit, so you can reduce or increase the trend line sensitivity. When you reduce it, there will be more trend lines. This is because the pivots will become more sensitive, i.e. it waits a lot less time for the pivots to be confirmed. And a pivot is a relatively significant high or low, and this is what the line joins itself up to. So as we can see, we drop it down to 5 and we see a lot more trend lines. Now the default is 20, so if we increase this to 30, then we'll see a dramatic decrease in them. And look at this, we only see one line here and one line there and one line there, and whereas we had quite a few before. So let's just drop that back to the default, which is our preference of 20, and we'll see how that impacts it. And you can see that it is relatively successful standalone. So if we took each of these trades, would trade up 4% there, would trade down 4% there, give or take, and again 7%, and so on and so on. Now unfortunately you'll probably get stopped out there unless you were DCAing up and going down again, but you cannot win them all. And what we can see here is a solid line is a confirmed trend line, and then the dotted line is one that is waiting to be confirmed or broken. So once the price breaks down on this trend line, then we'll be alerted of a potential short. But in a nutshell, we have just tried to make trend lines a little bit simpler and also already drawn on the chart to save you, even as an advanced trader, having to draw on a trend line every single time that you go onto a chart. The next setting, the moving average menu. Now the moving averages, like trend lines and support and resistance, are pretty much the first three things that you'll learn about when trading. And moving averages are no joke. A lot of people will use these to help identify the trend direction or the momentum of a asset, which is fine, and it can certainly be done in that way because a lot of traders will be watching these, so a lot of traders will be abiding by these. However, our favorite way to use these is more like moving support and resistances. So when price touches them or approaches them, then generally we do see quite a lot of price action. Here's some good examples. So the moving averages that we use by default on the BlockParty indicator are simply the 20, 50 and 200. We set them all to the EMA, but most importantly we set them to the 1-day time frame. We'll take a look at these settings more in depth in a minute. However, we'll look at the effectiveness of them using them to trade with. So the purple line here is the 200, the white line is the 50 and the green line, the fastest one, is the 20. Now what we can see here, as the price has broken down, it broke through the 200 and it came back and it retested the 200, and almost at that point perfectly, it broke back down. But then inversely, as the price breaks through, it comes back down, tests the 200 and bounces back up for a perfect pullback. And then we can see it again, testing the 200 EMA, and it bounces up for a massive gain. And then we follow it all the way back down here. As we break through, it retests, it can't hold it, and it can't hold it, and it breaks down again. And we see this again and again. As it approaches it, it gets rejected, approaches, rejected, and as it can't hold this pullback, it breaks down and continues further down. This is how we tend to use the moving averages instead of using them as confirming the direction, which, ultimately you can do, but they're such lagging indicators. You can often enter into trades like this section up here, which is actually starting to, all of the moving averages are telling you that this price is looking strong. We're in a very bullish momentum. However, the reality is the momentum is actually dissipating and we're starting to reverse. So using them as like I said, a moving support and resistance tends to be more effective. Now, there is an important note that comes along with this, and the reason why we use the settings that we use is because the EMA, exponential moving average, is arguably the most popular style of moving average within crypto. The daily time frame is definitely up there with 1 hour and probably the most popular time frame, and the 20, 50 and 200 are the most popular settings. So why is this so important? It's because all technical analysis is based on trader psychology. So if you can get on board with what most of the traders are probably going to do, then that means that you have a likelihood of this trading analysis coming true. That being said, it doesn't mean that these are set in stone. In fact, you can do a whole heap with these, and you can adjust them to more scalping styles or even get very, very creative with them. So in the moving average types, you can choose from a simple moving average, exponential, weighted moving average, relative moving average, Hull MA, which is a Hull moving average, a double exponential moving average, a triple exponential moving average, a volume weighted moving average, and then finally an Arnold Lego moving average. So you can get very creative. In fact, actually, the Hull moving average on a setting of 180 on the 1 hour time frame is pretty excellent. Then you can also set the moving average length to whatever you choose, and also the time frame. So you can be trading on the 6 hour time frame, for instance, as we are here, but using the 1 day moving average. And then obviously you can change the colors of each of them to make them more relative to your chart colors and to make them pop for you easier. If you want to remove them all together, you can do it two ways. You can simply come to the style and remove the moving averages here, or you can just reduce the color down to 0, and then we won't see them. Otherwise, incredibly powerful tool, and also something to always be conscious of as the price is approaching each of these moving averages. Like I said, the 20, 50 and 200 EMAs on the daily are some of the most popular indicators in the world. Next up, we have the pivot, something that is a little bit more unfamiliar to most of you. However, it is extremely strong and it has been a big favorite of BlockParty trading almost since the very start of days for us. So by default, it is turned off, and the reason it is turned off is mainly because of clutter on the chart. So as I've turned them on, you have seen these little boxes just appear behind me. And what these pivots do, it gives you an average, all of the highs, all of the lows, and then the average middle price, which is signified by this central line. Now these are quite important, and they can actually be deemed as a pivotal support and resistance. So we now have 3 support and resistances going on. And it's an interesting concept of how these work because, as we can see just here, which is a fantastic example, these generally act as a bit of a magnet for price. So what I mean by this is when we can see this pivot has just formed, we'd get notified of it, this coming into the Monday. It runs from Monday to Sunday for these weekly pivots, from 12 till 12 for the daily pivots, and then from the start of the month to the end of the month for the monthly pivots. We'll have a look at those settings shortly. We'd see this weekly pivot appearing just here. And what we can see is the price has not reverted or passed through it or even tested this box. And that's very significant for this style of trading. We see the price dumps down and then it reverts back and actually passes through this weekly pivot. This is not an anomaly. In fact, this happens quite a lot. When we see untested weekly pivots, there is an extremely high chance, something like 80 or 90% chance, that the price is going to revert and test these weekly pivots, specifically with weekly pivots as it goes. And we see this happen time and time again. Let's take these two, for instance, as well, because they're great as they're opposing ones. We see that we'd get notified of this weekly pivot just here, just as the price is bursting upwards. Now, we'd probably think that it'd be a good idea to continue up with this and maybe catch along. But with the weekly pivot just here, it has not been filled. And then we see the price come crashing down and fill that weekly pivot. So that would have been a fantastic trade. And then again, we see that the price has crashed down and this weekly pivot has not been filled. But what happens is we could take a trade somewhere down about this region as a long, because we've got a very, very good idea that this weekly pivot is going to be tested or at least filled. So we could set a take profit at the bottom of it, a second take profit in the middle, and then again at the top if we wanted. And then what we see is the price smash back up and also test this pivot. So it is a great trading tool to use. You can use it standalone. We really do advise using it, to be honest, but it works even better when you've got it in confluence with a signal. So let's take this one specifically, for example. As we can see here, we know that this weekly pivot has not been tested at any point. We get a signal that has triggered just here. Now we'll be looking at taking a one-to-one trade on the most recent swing low, which is just down there. Now this is where it gets really fun and where you can actually use it to increase a lot of profit. We would usually take a one-to-one there, which would give us a 3.1% target based on this swing low or thereabouts. But we know that the pivot is at least here, so increasing it slightly will increase our risk reward to 1.25. Let's take a quick look at the settings for the pivots and what you can do to adjust them. So as you saw just there, you have an option where you can show the pivots. If your chart gets a little bit too cluttered and you don't really want them on there, that's fine. You can just turn them off here, and that will turn off all of the current pivots and also the historical ones. Now, if you only want to see the most recent pivot, then simply click Hide Historical Pivots, and that will remove all of the past ones. The reason why you kind of want to see the historical ones is because if there's any old unfilled pivots, then it's quite handy to have an identified, because it might mean that you'll get a signal and there's an old one 2 or 3 weeks ago that might be filled. You can also change the resolution to daily, weekly, and monthly. So at the moment, we're looking at the weekly pivot, which is our default and what we arguably say is the strongest one, but it is completely relative to what time frame you're trading on. If you're scalping, for instance, on like the 3-minute, 15-minute, then you probably want to be using the daily pivot. The daily pivot, granted, is not as strong and it doesn't have as high a fill rate as the weekly. And then the monthly as well, which is, if you're using the daily time frames, then you can use the monthly pivots. Again, it doesn't have as high a fill rate as the weekly pivots do, but it is very good to get a bearing on macro charts. You can adjust the colors, which is this central line just here, and also the fill. So for instance, you can just turn off these central lines and you can have it so you're just barely got this shading in the background and you know what you're looking for, and it doesn't tarnish the chart too much. So next up, we'll be taking a look at the support and resistance. These are auto-populating support and resistance zones. We have done our absolute best to try and tick as many boxes with these as possible in making them accurate, reliable, but also giving them enough breathing space so that they are actually usable in a trading scenario. So these are beneficial because a lot of new traders struggle to identify key support and resistances, whereas a lot of experienced traders just get a bit fed up of having to draw them onto every single chart. So let's take a look at where they're identified. So you can see them very, very clearly on this chart just here in these two larger zones, there, and then these thinner zones just here, here, and here. They simply connect highs and lows as they would be with the trend lines. So you can see this same low just here also signifies a point that the support and resistance is connected to, as is the trend line as well. And they simply marry up with each other, and if they fall within a certain range of each other, they'll create you a bit of a zone. So they don't have to be really, really strict. Taking a quick look at the settings, there are quite a lot of settings that you can mess around with these. That is because support and resistance are very subjective as to people's personal preference. The pivot period is simply how confirmed you want that high or low to be. So this will wait 20 candles before it confirms a high or a low, and then the highest candle in that past 20 candles will be deemed as a high or a low and an anchor point for where the support and resistance will start. The source simply identifies whether you want to use the high or low. So this is the wick, the absolute highest point of the wick and the lowest point of the wick, or to use the actual close and the opens of the candles. So each has their merits, but it's down to preference. Ours is high and low. The maximum channel width is how the distance of price between two pivot points that will allow a joined up support and resistance line, if that makes sense. So that's how you get these larger boxes just in the background. You can increase that up to 10% or down to 1% if you want to be extremely militant with your support and resistances. The strength, this basically indicates how many pivot points you require before a support or resistance zone is going to be added. So we take our base anchor point, wherever it may be. So let's take this base anchor point here. We need at least one more anchor point within 8% price variance of the past 300 bars, to be specific, and then it will draw a support and resistance zone, which is what has happened just here. Now, if we change this to 2, then this would disappear, or it might not actually, because we have a third one just here now. So if you had it to 2, then you'd effectively need 3 pivot points, if that makes sense. The maximum number of support and resistances is, as we have it by default, 10. So if we dropped this, for instance, down to 2, then we'd only see the most 2 recent support and resistances on there. So if your chart's getting super cluttered, then you can reduce that down. And then the loop back period is how many candles it will take into consideration. So for example, this is set to 200. It will ignore any pivot points further back than 200 candles. So you can be quite sharp and aggressive with this if you're looking at scalping, for instance. But for the most part, it's good to keep it quite a distance back because, support and resistances don't really go away. They can be very, very long term. So generally, the further back, the better. But, just be warned that it does take slightly longer load times. So if you're running through lots of charts, you don't want those extra seconds will matter. Lastly, you can adjust the colors of the support and resistance zones just here. If you want to turn them off, then drop these similarly to the moving averages down to 0. Or you can come into the style and turn off the boxes, and that'll turn off the support and resistance zones in the background. Then lastly, but not least, the color will change when the price moves into one of these zones. You can set it so that the price or the color will change of these zones. So it will signify you when you're in these zones and you're very conscious of it, which is pretty important. So if you're looking at trading kind of like a pullback style, breakout style or whatever, then that's quite handy to have when you're scanning through a lot of charts or you have multiple charts on one screen. Then you can have that sort of signify you. Then moving on to the core foundation of this indicator, which is the signals. There are 2 signal sets on here, the BlockParty signals 1 and the BlockParty signals 2. They both have slightly different engines behind them. Unfortunately, we can't reveal what they are for obvious reasons, but you are welcome to unselect one or select both and test them against each other. But we found pretty much for the most part, they have almost identical win rates and frequencies as well. I think Signals 2 has a slightly higher frequency, but they are both fantastic sets. However, we'd like to give the option just in case somebody happened to have a preference and it's helpful to keep them split apart. Maybe people want to send 2 different signal sets to do different bots, we don't know. But we thought it would be nice to keep them separate there. You can also show the signals positions, which we looked at the very start of the video. And as you can see, this populates in the background with all these handy little positions charts. And this is for very quick trading, quite handy when scalping. When scalping as well, you kind of always want to make sure that you're trying to get a slightly better position than entry. That helps increase either the risk reward or the win rates, one or the other. But if you're getting a better, sharper price, i.e. if this signal triggered and you entered the signal down here, then naturally you're going to get a better, more profit from it because you've got a sharper price, or you're going to be able to lower the take profit and get a higher win rate, or it'll close earlier. But for the most part, that is just a guide as to how to enter quickly. I've made it so it's nice and thin, so it doesn't end up tracking across your trades or current trades. For instance, it really does bother me when you see some of these, and this will just continue to go until one side is hit. As you can see, the frequency of these trades, it will pretty much always have a color in the background. I like to have just a quick setup there because I can always check back on it. It's not that hard. And you can adjust the signal sensitivity slightly. I was in two minds about adding this, but it does have its merits. So the signal sensitivity only affects the BlockParty signals number 2. If you reduce it down, then the signals will increase. Not dramatically, but they will certainly increase. This seems like a good idea because you may get some earlier entries in a lot of the trades. So as opposed to entering on candle 2, you'll enter on candle 1. But it also does result in more false signals. 10 is by far our favorite and the one that we've tested and we actively use in our automated trading setups, in our daily trading setups of our copy traders. If you increase it, it will actually wait for a more confirmed signal, so there will be fewer signals. However, again, it sounds like a good idea to want to use more confirmed signals, but what more confirmed usually leads to is later signals. So a lot of the time you'll actually be entering later into the trade, or where the price has gone further. So you kind of need to find that perfect balance between being quite high conviction on that trade entry, so it's not too late, but also not shooting your load too early. Next up, we have the stop loss sensitivity. Now, as we looked at earlier on, the stop loss is based on recent swing highs or lows, and the stop loss sensitivity will essentially look at the past 15 candles. The highest or lowest candle in the past 15 candles will be the one. Now, the style of these signals usually comes around where there is a pivot point, or just after a pivot point, I should say. So we tend to see that the stop losses fall within 15 candles usually. Sometimes they don't, but most of the time they do. So you can increase these. If you increase them, then it gives you a much wider stop loss, which is great. I'm not saying it will increase your win rate, because unfortunately your risk reward is also relative to your stop loss. So as your stop loss gets bigger, so does your risk reward TP, and that is something to bear in mind. And inversely, if you drop it down, let's say to 5, then your stop losses get much tighter and your trading becomes much more aggressive, which in some circumstances is actually pretty good. So you can operate quite aggressively, and it is great because your take profits are much shorter as well. So you're just getting in and out of trades very quickly. However, in crypto, as we know, it is very volatile. So you will probably get wicked out a lot of the time unnecessarily, and trades will go on to take profit. So just be conscious of that. Risk reward, you can adjust just here. So you can change it to really anything you want. Let's change it to 2 and see what happens. Well, instantly see these take profit zones increase, as you can see there. It's great when you hit a 2-to-1 risk reward or a 3-to-1 risk reward, but it does dramatically affect the win rate. So as we can testify to, the 1-to-1 risk reward has been quite rigorously tested, and we're very confident in putting that. That's why it's our default. It's what we trade to. But by all means, take advantage of the back testing sheets and data that's there. Build out your own strategies. We haven't tried every asset, every time frame, and every single possible combination of risk reward. So by all means, go out there, test it on some paper trading, back testing. You could find the magic bullet. And then lastly, the take profit colors and stop loss. This will just adjust these colors just here. You can make them way more intense, which is quite good. We keep them quite subdued. I don't tend to use them at all because I've used it enough now that I tend to be able to see where the stop losses are. As soon as you can find where the stop loss is, you can build everything from there. And then you were always aiming for a better trade entry, as we mentioned earlier on. And, we really have kind of looked very in depth at this, but the reality is it's a very, very simple to use indicator. You get a signal, you enter it, you put your stop loss where it tells you to, you put your take profit where the risk reward's meant to be or where it tells you. It's not much harder than that, guys. Then the final thing as well, you don't want to be looking at charts 24/7. So TradingView has an amazing alert function. And we have also added in some very, very easy to customize alerts functionality just here. So in alert management, your first option is add asset, entry price, targets, and time frame to message. What this will basically do, it'll add each of these mentioned things, the asset, the entry price, and it will also populate in this message box just down here. Now you won't see it until the trade actually fires. So what you would see here is you'd see this direction long, and then below it, you'd see all of this data which would be relevant to the chart. You'd see BTC, USDT, the entry price at 30,140, the targets or whatever it may be in the time frame, all down here. And this is to help if you want to have it directed towards a Telegram channel, or direct to your phone, email, whatever, even to a bot, so that you can actually get the exact targets and prices and assets updating to you. If you don't want anything to appear in there, so deselect it. If you're, let's say, setting up a bot on 3 commas or Mizar or whatever, then you can just basically delete everything in here and put whatever details you. A lot of smart trade platforms, will require the API key. You can actually fix in your API. You can actually fix in your ticker just here. So if they've got a very specific syntax for your ticker, whatever it may be, often they've kind of got underscores, or I know 3 commas has that kind of format. So you can completely customize it how you want it to be delivered to your automation. There's a full automation guide within the wiki, which you can check out for each platform, 3 commas, Mizar, Annie. So make sure that it's all set up. Do a few tests first before you go through and do it to all 200 assets or whatever. So it can be very laborious to go back and change it. But if you just want it for alerting yourself for trading, then you can just click this and it'll tell you all of the required information. And you can set up individual messages for each signal, whether it's the 1 signals on bullish and bearish, or 2 signals, bullish and bearish. We've even thrown in the trendline breakouts. They are off by default, just because we haven't back tested them. We don't live trade with them. They are just there to really signify us on certain assets if there is a significant breakout. Otherwise, they're off by default, but they're quite handy to have to, like I said, notify you of some manual setups. By default, we have all of the 4 key signals on. Bullish BlockParty signal 1 and 2, bearish BlockParty signal 1 and 2, which is just here, 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 and here. And when you have these turned on, let's say you're just trading spot, for instance, then you can turn off the short signals and just receive the long ones. Or if it is anything like 2022, then you can turn off the long signals and just trade the shorts. So it is super easy to do. And of course, you can check out our documentation on how to set alerts. But the way to set them is you'll just head up here to the little clock icon, set the alert, and then however you have defined your alerts in the settings, you just come here where it says BlockParty Indicator, any alert function, open-ended alert if you've got the premium account, and then you can put whatever alert name you want in there. Of course, you can set any notifications you want. There's the basic ones, which is the app, the pop-up, the email, and then of course you can put it on the webhook as well. So as you can see, we have our default webhooks going to our bots and stuff like that. You can play a sound, which is great for scalping. So you don't really need to have anything going on. You can just have a sound and it will just alert you, and you can jump on, set that trade up and enter, and away you go. The last thing that we want to touch on is the backtesting. So backtesting is super important before you get started on any kind of strategy. You want to get a bit of a bearing for it. Does it work? Are you just going to start trading with live money, live capital, and you feel as though it's going to work? You actually want to have a bit of data behind you. And the closest thing that you can really do to that outside of live testing is backtesting. So you can see how the trades actually performed over certain assets, certain bunch of time. We've taken the time to share a lot of our backtesting data with you across the key assets that we have found the most success on. We have a whole ton more of backtesting data that we have not bored you with. These are the most prominent ones that we've found have been the most successful, and we have broken it down into, let's take March here, for instance, each and every single day and how it's worked. We've taken every single setup, the exchange, the asset, and given you what the win rate is and what the kind of monthly net P&L is. You can also do such things as adding in the slippage and the fees, the allocation, the risk per trade, etc., etc. And you can simply just copy and paste this, delete all the information, and you can backtest all this yourself. All of the formulas are in there, so it'll do it all for you. You know, you're backtesting here and making sure that once you start to navigate into other areas, you can use such things as like Trader's Edge. I think that's a pretty good backtesting platform. We like to do a little bit more old school. I've also done kind of trading sessions as well, which I do personally. What is my trading session? I trade between 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday to Friday. I don't do a lot of trading outside of that. And I'll trade those trades and see what that's like. You know, so I can get a bit more of a realistic idea of what my success rate, my earnings are going to be like after I'm actually, you know, what I'm trading like in real life. So guys, that covers pretty much everything in regards to the BlockParty indicator, what you get with it. And of course, the most important thing is we are only at the end of a Telegram message or an email. So if you do run into any struggles or speed bumps, then just drop us a message and we'd be more than happy to help and guide. Well, guys, that is everything. Good luck with the BlockParty indicator. We hope it brings you as much success as it has brought us. It is something we're extremely proud of and we pretty much exclusively use now. There's going to be a whole ton more videos dropping on the YouTube channel of us using this in live trading scenarios and also doing a lot of reflection on our live results as well across a lot of our products. You know, we have products across Annie, Mizar, 3 Commas, and also BitGet as well, all which pretty much use this indicator as the baseline for it all. Anyway, guys, good luck out there and look forward to using the indicator.